There is a certain kind of fear that lives quietly beneath the surface of the human heart. It does not shout. It does not make a scene. It simply lingers, soft as dust, waiting for moments of stillness to rise. It is the fear of being forgotten. Forgotten by the people whose presence shaped you. Forgotten by the hearts you still carry in pieces within your own. Forgotten by those whose names still echo inside your thoughts, even when their footsteps have faded from your life. This fear is not dramatic. It is tender. It grows in the silence after goodbyes that never felt complete. In the quiet spaces where memories replay themselves in gentle loops. It forms in the ache of wanting to matter to someone long after they have moved on. This story explores that ache, the quiet longing, the soft panic, the fragile hope that someone remembers you, even in the places where you no longer belong. The moment you feel left behind there is always a moment when the fear first becomes visible. It might be subtle, almost easy to overlook, a message left unanswered longer than usual, a change in someone's tone, a friend who grows quieter, a person who once made you feel seen drifting into another season of their life. Nothing dramatic, nothing loud, just small signals that make your heart tighten as though bracing for something it cannot name. You begin to notice the shift before you can explain it. You start rereading your last conversations. You replay your interactions, wondering if you said something wrong. You scan your memories for clues of distance you might have missed. The fear awakens slowly, like a shadow stretching across the floor at dusk. It creeps in through silence. It arrives through absence. This fear does not accuse. It questions, are they forgetting me? Am I fading in their life? Did I matter as much as I thought? You begin to feel the faint sting of invisibility, not because you stopped caring, but because you sense they might have, and that realization carries a quiet sadness, the kind that sits behind your ribcage, like a small trembling animal seeking warmth. The ache deepens when you notice how easily people can shift, how quickly they can adapt to a life without you. You watch them continue forward while you remain tethered to memories that still feel warm in your hands. You begin to understand that the fear is not just about them. It is about you, about the part of your heart terrified that the connections you hold on to are only alive on your side. This chapter reveals that beginning, the moment when someone you cannot forget begins to feel far away, the moment the fear whispers that you may already be slipping into the margins of their story while they remain the center of yours. The roots of longing for remembrance, fear of being forgotten, rarely starts with one person. Its origins lie much deeper, often woven into the earliest chapters of your life. Somewhere in your childhood, there were moments when you felt unseen, moments when someone you loved turned away too soon, moments when your emotions were met with silence or your presence was taken for granted. Maybe you were the child who learned to be quiet because no one asked what you felt. Maybe you were the one who tried to earn affection through being good, hoping that being perfect meant being remembered. Maybe you watched someone you adored leave without explanation, someone whose absence left a mark too deep for time to erase. Or perhaps you lost someone unexpectedly, a friend who moved, a parent who left, a relationship that faded without closure. Each loss carries a lesson the heart absorbs quietly. Things slip away, people change, memories fade faster than love does. From these early wounds grows a longing that follows you into adulthood, the longing to matter enough to be held in someone's memory even after circumstances shift, the longing to leave an imprint strong enough that you cannot be erased. When you care deeply, remembrance becomes the closest thing to safety. Being remembered means your existence mattered. Being remembered means you were loved in a way that outlasts presence. This chapter traces that origin, the emotional blueprint that makes some people fear being forgotten more intensely than others, a fear shaped not by weakness, but by experiences where love felt fragile and attachments proved temporary. And so you grew into someone who remembers everything, hoping someone might one day remember you with the same devotion. The psychology of fearing be a lightly wither. Fear of being forgotten is more than an emotion. It is a psychological response rooted in how the human brain experiences attachment and loss. At its core, the fear connects to the nervous system's need for belonging. Humans are wired to bond, wired to be held in the emotional world of others, wired to find safety in continuity. When someone important becomes distant, the brain interprets that distance as threat, not physical danger, but emotional danger. The amygdala activates with subtle alarm. You feel tension in your chest. Your thoughts become restless. Your mind circles around small details, trying to regain a sense of security. This is not obsession, it is biology. The fear centers fire because emotional bonds feel at risk. Memory also plays a role. The brain forms stronger imprints around people who shaped you emotionally. Their faces, their voices, their gestures become encoded with depth. When you cannot forget someone, it is because your brain stored them as significant. But the brain has no guarantee they stored you with the same intensity. And that disparity creates a painful cognitive gap. I remember them too deeply, and they might not remember me at all. Attachment psychology calls this imbalance emotional asymmetry, and it triggers feelings of insecurity, longing, and self-questioning. The fear also ties to the human need for narrative continuity. People want to believe their presence mattered in someone's story. Being forgotten dismantles that belief. It unsettles the ego and wounds the heart. It implies that the love you gave, the time you invested, the pieces of yourself you shared, may not have left the imprint you hoped for. This chapter reveals the inner mechanics of that fear, the psychology behind the ache. The brain's attempt to protect your need for connection by trying to hold on to people who may have loosened their grip on you. The inner tension of loving the people who fear being forgotten lives a profound imbalance. They love deeply, they remember intensely, they carry connections long after others have let go. And this depth creates tension, a quiet war between longing and self-protection. On one side is the heart that refuses to forget. It replays moments that still feel alive. It cherishes memories like fragile artifacts. It hopes for a message, a sign of remembrance, a small confirmation that the past still matters to someone other than you. On the other side is the pain of waiting, the pain of caring more than you should, the pain of investing in connections that may not hold you with the same strength. This creates internal dissonance, the desire to reach out and the fear of seeming desperate, the desire to stay connected and the fear of discovering you are no longer thought of, the desire to be meaningful and the fear that you never truly were. This tension exhausts the emotional world. You try to appear indifferent, but inside you feel every shift. You try to stay busy, but their memory drifts into your mind through the smallest triggers. A song, a scent, a place, a moment that mirrors something you once shared. Your heart is loyal even when your mind begs for distance. This chapter sits inside that conflict. The ache of loving deeper than you are loved. The quiet desperation of hoping not to be erased. The painful truth that caring intensely often feels like holding on to someone with both hands, while they hold you with only fingertips. The moment you realize they have moved, and there comes a moment when the fear you held quietly becomes confirmed. A moment when you realize they have moved forward without looking back. It might be something small, a casual remark, a forgotten detail, a flicker of disinterest, or something larger, a new relationship, a changed routine, a life unfolding in places where you are no longer part of the picture. This realization does not always break you loudly. Sometimes it breaks you softly, like a quiet collapse inside the chest. You feel something loosen and fall. A hope you did not admit to holding dissolves. A belief you carried quietly loses its shape. You begin to understand something painful but true. People can outgrow the memories you still live in. They can let go of moments that still echo inside you. They can forget details your heart treated as sacred. You realize their life has expanded, shifted, rearranged itself into something that no longer includes you. The moment brings grief, not just for them, but for the version of yourself that believed you could not be forgotten. You grieve the emotional intimacy that once made you feel important. You grieve the connection that once anchored you. But beneath the grief lies a quieter realization. Their forgetting is not proof of your insignificance. It is evidence of their path diverging from yours. This chapter reveals the turning point, the moment when you confront the truth that the person you cannot forget may no longer carry you in the same way. It is the moment the heart breaks, not from drama, but from clarity. The return to yourself. After the grief settles, something tender begins to happen. You start returning to yourself, not dramatically, not suddenly, but gently. Like someone walking back home after wandering too far, you begin to realize that your fear of being forgotten says more about your capacity to love than it does about your worth. You understand that remembering deeply is not a weakness. It is a sign of emotional richness. A heart that imprints easily is also a heart capable of profound connection. You start reclaiming the energy you once invested in holding on. You allow yourself to sit with the memories without clinging to them. you slowly understand that being forgotten does not erase the meaning you once shared. The past remains real, even if it no longer continues. Your worth is not measured by whether someone carries you into their future. Your worth is in the love you gave, the sincerity you lived, the depth you felt. As you return inward, you notice how much space opens within you. Space not for someone else to remember you, but for you to remember yourself. You reconnect with your own needs, your own path, your own growth. You let the ache soften. You allow the longing to settle. And without realizing it, you begin to release the fear that once gripped you so tightly. This chapter marks the beginning of integration, the moment when your heart starts to belong to itself again. The freedom of being unforgettable to YOUSEL fair story ends not with forgetting, but with freedom. A freedom born from recognizing that you no longer need someone else's memory to validate your existence. You learn that being unforgettable to yourself is the only permanence that truly matters. You begin to understand that people come and go, but the impact you made remains within you. You carry the lessons, the growth, the tenderness, the moments of connection that shaped your journey. You do not erase what mattered. You simply stop waiting for someone else to hold it for you. You discover a new truth. You are allowed to remember people without needing them to remember you. You are allowed to love without being held in return. You are allowed to cherish moments without requiring them to remain alive in another person's mind. In this acceptance, the fear dissolves. It does not disappear completely, but it loses its power. You realize that being forgotten by others does not diminish the depth of who you are. Your worth does not depend on your place in someone else's memory. Your story continues even when it no longer intersects with theirs. The freedom comes gently, a soft release, a quiet breath, a sense of finally coming home to yourself. You learn that your presence is not fragile, your value is not conditional, and your heart is not defined by who remembers it. The story ends with a truth you can finally hold without pain. You may be forgotten in someone else's world, but you are not forgotten in your own, and that is enough.